Well, we just heard from Donald Trump in what you might say was a bit of a campaign speech there, talking to members of the NRA, talking about the importance of the Second Amendment, talking about the importance of that wall, saying we are in fact going to get it, and talking about his accomplishments, including the fact that he has now got Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. I'm joined for analysis by Media Buzz host Howie Kurtz and Fox News contributor Pete Hegseth as well. You know, it's good to see both of you. One of the guests that was just on, Scott Bolden, who ran the Democratic Party there in D.C., Howie, was making the point that Trump hasn't accomplished anything, nothing at all. And that seems to be very much the narrative we have been hearing from the media as we come up on 100 days. What do you say that contests that?
Well, there is a largely negative narrative because the media judge presidencies by one thing. How many big bills did you get through Congress? And look, the health care bill was a setback. Nobody disputes that. But the president has accomplished a lot of things beside Gorsuch. You know, not only the executive orders, but the pipeline, the regulatory rollbacks. There's been a lot of activity. And also, the president is right in this point. The artificial 100-day standard is absurd. A year from now, nobody will care whether he got something through by April 29th or not.
How does this compare and contrast with other presidencies, though? In other words, you know, you got to remember, you're there 4 years, right? And you think back to what Reagan was trying to do, Pete, in the way of tax cuts, for example. I mean, this is hard stuff to get through. It takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight.
That's exactly right. First of all, you judge against the last 8, and it is a dramatic and complete turnaround. The language of business versus the language of unions and the environment. The language of growth versus the language of more government. That remains who he is. And so that speech right there is a reminder to his supporters, regardless of what you hear in the so-called mainstream media, this is the same guy you elected who's still committed to the campaign promises he made. Turns out the swamp is really mucky and really deep and difficult to navigate. He's a businessman who's used to certain stimuli. It's a little different in Washington. Now he's got his feet underneath him. He's got a great new tax bill proposed. Healthcare, they're taking another run at it. The wall's being built. He's trying to rebuild the military. American leadership is back on the world stage. We're going to protect your guns. We've got a Supreme Court nominee. To his supporters out there, that speech right there is a reminder of why they voted for him and a signaling that he could have just as much political capital, if not more, going into the next one.
See, I agree with you on that. This is exactly what I was just saying to Scott Bolden, because I think this is all about building political capital. Effectively, what he's doing here, Howie, is he's reminding the swamp that he's the guy that got elected, that he's the one with the charisma, he's the one that ignited the base and really turned conservatism somewhat on its head. Right? I mean, this is not traditional conservatism. We have seen a very different kind of thing emerge here, where suddenly, you know, people from the Rust Belt, people from unions that historically have always voted for the Democratic Party are looking at Donald Trump and saying, he's the one that can help me. In other words, political capital, is he building it enough to start to scare the guys and gals on Capitol Hill enough to get him to start doing what he wants?
Yeah, that's the key point, because not only is Donald Trump an outsider who has had to and is learning the ways of Washington, which moves very, very slowly, as you know, but he's almost like an independent president because he ran against the Republican establishment as well as against the Democrats. He's got differences with the more doctrinaire conservative wing of the House, for example, on replacing and repealing Obamacare, on other issues. And so he is knocking heads. He's doing all these interviews this week, naturally, and he's giving speeches like the one at the NRA, to keep his connection going with his base, with his constituency, who in turn can pressure those in Congress who might want to thwart him.
Newsflash, despite the polls, despite what you see out there, Pete, I don't think his base has gone anywhere.
It's gone nowhere. I can confirm that. I'm on the road a lot with Fox and Friends at these diners talking to people. I live in Middle America anyway. The base for Donald Trump is more energized than ever, and if they point a finger at anybody, it's House Republicans, it's Congress, it's special interests, it's unions, it's people who are going to battle him no matter what. And they say, this is still the guy that I sent to Washington to overturn the apple cart. No, that's what they say.
Yeah, no,
and they watch the media that's dripping with fake news and condescension toward him, and they say, no, 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 that even affirms more for me, because I know where his heart is on these issues. So I couldn't agree more. And that's why the speech today at the NRA, the speech is going to hold tomorrow. What a great contrast. I'm not going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'm going to go speak to the people, because that's where my pulse is. I think that's where his power remains.
They love it.
They love it.
So good to see you. Thank you so much, Pete and Howie.